The biggest mistake people make after getting an IRS letter is throwing it away. Not opening it, not reading it, not responding to it. Just letting it sit on the counter until it becomes another piece of paper they don't want to look at. And I understand why people do it. Because when you see those three letters, IRS, it doesn't feel like information. It feels like a threat. But here's the part most people don't realize. Throwing away the letter does not make the IRS problem disappear. It usually makes the IRS problem easier for the IRS to win. I'm Brad Paladini. I'm a tax attorney and founder of Paladini Law. My team and I help individuals and business owners who are getting IRS letters, tax bills, collection notices, and other threatening mail get out of tax trouble with clear, realistic plans they can actually afford. And in this video, I'm going to show you what happens when you ignore an IRS notice, why that decision can cost people thousands of dollars, and what you should do instead before the problem escalates. Because the earlier you deal with the notice, the more options you usually have. The longer you wait, the more control you give away. Let's start with the real reason this happens. You open the mailbox, you see the IRS envelope, and immediately your stomach drops. Maybe you're scared, maybe you're confused, maybe you're already overwhelmed and you think, I can't deal with this today. So you set it down, you tell yourself, I'll take a look at it later. Then later becomes a few days becomes a few weeks, and eventually the letter is buried under bills, mail, and everything else going on in your life. But here's the problem. The IRS does not pause the process because you paused emotionally. The clock keeps running whether you respond or not. This is what most people do not understand. An IRS letter is usually not a random piece of mail. It is part of a sequence. That means the first notice can lead to the next notice, and the next notice can lead to the next notice. For example, a balance due can turn into a more urgent collection notice. A CP 2000 income mismatch notice can turn into an assessed tax bill. An audit or examination letter can turn into a proposed change. A warning notice can turn into enforced collection action. And this is where people get hurt financially. Every step forward can reduce your options. Early in the process, you may be able to dispute the issue, send missing information, correct a mistake, or stop the IRS from finalizing the wrong result. But once deadlines pass, those options can start disappearing. This is why ignoring the first letter can be so expensive. Here's the part that shocks people. The IRS does not always have to be right in order for you to end up owing money. Sometimes they just have to send the notice, wait out the deadline, and move the process forward. If you don't respond within the required window, the IRS may be allowed to assume their position is correct. And once that happens, the tax can be assessed. Penalties can be added. Interest can start compounding. Collections can begin. And yes, this can happen even if the IRS started with incorrect information. Let me say that again. Even if the IRS is wrong, ignoring the letter can allow that incorrect position to become much harder and much more expensive to fix. That is how someone can end up paying far more than they actually owed in the first place. So, what should you do instead? Step 1, decode the letter. Do not panic and do not assume every IRS notice means the same thing. Some letters are balance due notices. Some are CP 2000 notices for income mismatches. Some are audit or examination letters. Some are collection notices. Each type of notice requires a different strategy. The first thing you want to look for is the notice number, which is usually the top right corner of the letter. The notice number tells you what process you are in. And once you know what process you are in, you can start figuring out what options are still available. Without that, you are guessing. And guessing is not a good strategy. Step 2, identify the real deadline. This is critical. Most IRS letters include a response window. That deadline may determine whether you can dispute something before it becomes final, whether you can provide missing information, or whether you still have leverage to stop the problem from escalating. So don't just read the amount due. Don't just read the scary language. Find the deadline. Ask yourself, when do I have to respond? What happens if I do not respond? What rights or options could I lose if I miss this date? Because with the IRS notices, time is not just time. Time is leverage. Step 3, get organized before you respond. This is where a lot of people make their second mistake. They panic, call the IRS immediately, and start talking before they understand the issue. Before you call, write, or upload anything, you want to gather the basics. This includes your tax transcripts, the tax years involved, any W-2s, 1099s, business records, or supporting documents connected to the notice. And most importantly, you need to understand the difference between what the IRS thinks happened and what actually happened. That is the difference between reacting emotionally and responding strategically. Once you engage, you are moving the case forward. You want to move it forward with a plan. Here's how a professional looks at the same letter. They don't ignore it, but they also do not rush into action blindly. First, they identify what type of notice it is. Then they determine what stage of the IRS process it represents. Then they look at what options are still available. Only after that do they decide how to respond. Sometimes the right move is a written response. Sometimes it's requesting more time. Sometimes it's challenging the IRS position. Sometimes it's providing missing documents. Sometimes it's structuring a resolution the taxpayer can actually afford. The point is this: the response should not be random. Every move should be intentional. This is the big picture. Throwing away the IRS letter may feel like avoiding the problem, but in reality, it usually hands control over to the IRS. Opening it gives you information. Understanding it gives you options. Responding correctly gives you control. And that is the entire difference between being dragged through the IRS process and having a strategy for getting out of it. If you have received an IRS letter and you have not yet opened it, open it today. If you opened it and did not understand it, don't ignore it. And if you missed a deadline, do not assume it is too late to do anything. The sooner you understand where you are in the process, the more options you may have. If you want help reviewing your notice and figuring out what the right response is, we offer consultations where we break down your situation, identify the deadlines, explain what the IRS is asking for, and map out what to do next. You can use the link below to schedule a call. And if you found this information helpful, subscribe, because I break down IRS notices, tax problems, and real-world IRS situations so you know what to do before things get worse.